Good morning, guys. This is the Addiction Channel podcast, the Recovery Channel podcast. My name is Dr. Rob Kelly, the Addiction Doctor, along with Jennifer Lovely. Good morning to everybody live on Facebook and YouTube. Good morning, Jen.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Living the dream instead of dreaming of living today. It's going to be a great day. As you know, we have a couple of patients that need a tap on the head today, so we'll be doing that. Apart from that, after 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, I think I'm clear for the day. It's beautiful sunshine here in San Antonio. I know that for sure.
That's nice. It's beautiful and sunshiny here in Sedona, Arizona. I'm super excited about our guest today. You know how much I love talking to other parents that have struggled in the world of addiction.
Definitely. Andrew Barkis is on the show, guys. Been advertised all over the place. You'll get a good follow-up. One of the reasons why we do this show is lack of knowledge from the public about, when I came to America 14 years ago, I told everybody there was an epidemic on about the drugs and alcohol, the homelessness. Myself being homeless for a period of 14 months, lost of everything, kids, wife, everything, saw the real damage that's done, but came back into the real world and do what I do today. And the lack of knowledge about what's happening out there is absolutely frightening. It really is, Jen.
I know it is. Well, and that's really what we're about, is to not only educate people, but talk about it. Let's not pretend it doesn't exist, right? Yeah, let's splay the wound open. Let's look at it. Let's heal it. That's what I'm all about.
Yeah, definitely. And the more people we can reach, the better. So if you're listening now, right into Sirius Radio. We need an absolute amazing show that's going to reach everybody in the US, because we need to start raising the profile. Sometimes it's just you're hitting a blank wall every single time. We need to go national with this, and I think this is one of the shows that we ask what other people are thinking, so we get down to the raw and real questions, and I love that about us.
Yeah, me too. So let's do it, my friend.
Okay, guys, stick around for 15 seconds. When we come back on screen, Andrew Barkis will be with us. Good morning, guys. Welcome back. This is the Recovery Channel podcast. My name is Dr. Rob Kelly, the Addiction Doctor, along with Jennifer Lovely. Our special guest this week is Andrew Barkis. Good morning, Andrew.
Well, good morning to you both. Nice to be here, and thank you for the invitation to come and chat with you on this. Well, it's not sunny here in Washington. It's still dark because it's very early. So I'm jealous that you're sitting in sunshine right now.
Yes, I bet you are. I bet you are. So I'm going to go right to it. I want the audience to know, and I watched what it was called, the Soul of Seattle is Dying. Is that correct?
Well, Jennifer, it was a series that was called Seattle is Dying. It was a documentary series that was produced by Como 4 News here in Seattle. The last iteration of that was Fighting for the Soul of Seattle, which was the last one.
Yes. So I'm watching it, and I want to say you are either in front of a judge or actually in front of the Senate. And you said, you know who the face of addiction is? It's my son.
Yeah. So I have the honor and privilege of serving in the Washington State House of Representatives, where I was just elected to my third term as a state representative. And the clip that was played on that show was a floor speech that I was giving during a debate on a piece of legislation that I was trying to get some money in the budget to help law enforcement with our drug problem. And it just, when you're giving a speech on the floor, nothing's prepared. We have to do it and it was pure emotion. All of a sudden I decided to share really what we were talking about and why it was so important that we did what we did. And it resonated.
Definitely. Wow. Yeah. The problem is with addiction that I see right now is a couple of problems. And homelessness, I can speak about that because of me, is the police are overwhelmed with calls time and time again, which really need to nothing. They're very important calls, but we need to do something about the homeless population. We can't just forget about them. I mean, it's absolutely disgraceful. I mean, look at me. I went to Oxford University and I'm homeless, and people are spitting on me and ignoring me and throwing stuff at me. I mean, that's no way to treat a human being, but that's what's happening in our cities. Would you agree?
I completely agree. It is not compassion, right? We hear a lot about compassion from us, certain political aspects, and how we have to be a certain way. But I drive every day into my office at the Capitol, and I drive by ever-growing, increasing homeless encampments along the freeway, that are just spilling almost onto the freeway. I pull off the highway there, and there's a couple gentlemen, same people have been there for forever. And I think to myself, how is this allowed? Why is these people, why are they still here on the side of the freeway? And why are these camps allowed to continue to be there and to grow larger every day? So I've been pushing this question, and we know, and these shows kind of brought to the forefront, the people living in here are not folks who are down on their luck because they just lost their job at Boeing or something, and they've got to go live in a tent under a tree. These are people suffering, most of them from some form of addiction, and the big thing here right now is heroin and methamphetamines, and then of course the mental health crisis that goes right along with it. They're either in mental health crisis and then addiction, or addiction then becomes mental health crisis, and it just keeps growing. But they've congregated together, and now they have their own communities right here that's being allowed.
Yeah. And, I want to say that, in my opinion, and this is not probably a very popular philosophy, but we are loving them to death. And I only know that as a parent who, for a period of time, I was going to love my kids to death.
Yeah.
And they were going to die of, heroin or methamphetamine.
Been there.
Yeah. So talk to me about your story and the impact that it had on your life with your son.
Well, so my son, who is now 26, has been addicted to heroin for, I want to say probably the last 8 years, but he's been in some form of something for at least 10 to 12 years. Mm-hmm. And, normal everyday family, baseball and Boy Scouts, I like to say, and doing all the great stuff. And all of a sudden started to see some changes back when he was in middle school. And, like any parent, you really don't know what's going on. This is our first child. We, figured that just going through the terrible teens and everything else. Well, come to find out, he'd already been experimenting with, pot and alcohol and everything else. Well, it got worse and worse as we got into high school, started skipping school. That led to going into, juvenile, that led into the courts, that led into all sorts of stuff, right? And we had to take some drastic steps, even to the point where we had to look at a program, and we actually sent him to a school in Nevada for 10 months, and we tried everything, right? We're trying all these different things, and he came back and he met up with the same people. And as his story goes, which was disclosed on this show when we were doing this interview, I didn't even know really this part. He had a friend who broke both his arms, and he went over to his house one day, and his friend was sitting there, and he was, how are you handling all this pain? He goes, oh, these great pills I've got. He goes, you ought to try one. And so he did. And of course, that was Oxy. And, that just started it. And Oxy led to the pills. The pills are expensive, leads to stealing, leads to all the things that go with it that we see. And then eventually you can't get the pills, so somebody offers you heroin. And that was it. And so he has been, in and out of recovery programs for the last 6-7 years. We had to cut him off from the family. We had to do all the things that you do. It has been horrific. I mean, it has been a journey that has been absolutely horrific. But, by the grace of God, He walked himself literally back into a detox and started on the road, and he's been clean now for over 9 months. And we just celebrated the first holidays together that we've had together as a family in years. I mean, absolute years.
Beautiful. Here's a sobering thought for everybody out there. So not only have we been working with alcoholics and addicts for over 30 years, but we do our research on that. I specialize in neuroplasticity and brain science. We do questionnaires when they come in. Okay, here we go. You might not know this, Andrew, and you might be shocked by it. 90% of people that we've researched, and it'll be almost probably 7,000 maybe, every single patient that we've dealt with, about 7,000 over 30 years. 90% of those people started their heroin trip at their local GP, at their local doctors. It all started with a pill. Now, here's my take on it. If you have the addicted brain, which means we're born this way, guys, it's hereditary. You can chase it back through your family, predisposition. Should we be allowed to be taking these pain pills? Because pain pills for the normal person can get out of hand and they can become addicted to it. Pain pills for the alcoholic or addict, it's a death trap. Every single time when you take it, you ain't going to stop. And I hear this story time and time again, where it gets too expensive. They have to go to the streets. I mean, what are we doing wrong? What are the doctors doing wrong, Andrew? I mean, what's going on with the medical fraternity? That I mean, some guys in Florida and other states around, you know, the pain mills, the pain med mills that go round and round and round. Why are we letting this happen?
Well, I wish I had that answer. I'm not in the medical field. You know, it's what we know in our Western society. It's how we treat things. There are many different schools of thought when it comes to, you know, pain management and how we do it. And I'm, you know, for some it works, and for some, like you said, the normal aspects. But the real problem becomes, you know, when we're not identifying it before the situation. So you know, for example, with the knowledge that my son had, he just had knee surgery here, and he, not me, he went in and said, I can't do any pain medication. And this was amazing because he has that foreknowledge now. He literally, the nurse said, this is one strong young man. He woke up out of the surgery and leaned over to the attending and said, no narcotics. And he was like, you know, coming out of his, you know, thing. But it's just, I don't know the answer to that, Rob, because it seems to be that this has been at the source of it. Now, the other side of the equation, the heroin, you know, we've had drugs on our streets forever. And, you know, we've had the war on drugs. We've had all these different approaches to drugs. It just, you know, it's become so prevalent and so easy to get and so cheap. You know, I don't know. It's just. Can
I give you an idea? Let me give you a thought pattern of mine. There's no money or no profit in people recovering. There's no money or no profit of helping the homeless. Education lacks when it comes to stuff like this. And the reason why it lacks is that the pharmaceutical companies run this country. End of story. I was aghast when I came to this country, went to my doctors, and he asked me, did I want Adderall? And I was just amazed that would happen. So I suggest what we're lacking is education, first of all, because if you have addiction in the family, you know, we need to be telling our kids to stay away, you know, from heavy payment, and be careful when you're out with your friends drinking, and just keep an eye on it. I think that I mean, we've tested a few people where children in the 17, 18-year-old range are just aware that, hey, there's addiction in the family. And secondly, let's just be careful. And it's amazing when somebody gets the education, the decisions like your son can make once we know. But what's happening is we don't know. And the reason why we don't know, again, going back to pharmaceutical companies, if they can't give us a pill, no, there's no money in it. Nobody's making a buck out of this. So nobody wants to know. And I think we need to spread this education as much as we can. And that's what we've been trying to do. But it's like with a grain of sand on the beach. You know, it's hard to get this message over.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of my key points I always make is, education, communication. I've been saying that forever. You've got to lay it out and spread the word. And that goes in so many different directions and for so many different things. And so it's what I'm trying to do in a lot of ways. It's what you're doing right now with your program. And, by telling these stories and by doing that, hopefully a parent will understand this. I've had so many people come up to me after that show, and they didn't know who to talk to. They didn't know how to deal with this. They've been keeping it inside. They didn't know who to turn to. The biggest tragedy, and if we talk about it a little bit further, is how to get people help. I mean, it's just like to talk about a nightmare. I mean, when you first try, when your son or daughter comes to you and says, "I need help," and you try to navigate the insurance and figure out how to do this. Oh, I got a story that will blow your mind on that.
Yeah. Well, I think we all do. And what I'm really curious about is because the thing is I'm sorry, my dog wants to say, I need to go out. I apologize. One of the things that, we love our kids to death, but, and there's a holistic place that we could begin to look as a country to make this a different experience in our country. And yes, educate, communicate. But where do you think that we need to go in terms of holistically as a country to have a different conversation in this pandemic of our epidemic of drug addiction?
Oh, well,
I know.
What I've been saying here lately, I mean, there's so many different schools of thought, right? There is the one when it comes to like our people on the street, the homeless. They have to make the choice, right, to decide that they don't want to be in that circumstance anymore. And I agree with that. I understand that, but I also think they have to be shown some choices, and the option to stay where they're at has to be removed. Mm-hmm. And I think that is at the core, and that is the political will. That is the battle that we're seeing right now. Do we let them stay there, or do we not let them stay there? Mm-hmm. And if we're not going to let them stay there, then the holistic aspect has to be recovery on a grand scale, and it has to be options for people to see that there's a better way, and there are alternatives, and there is a pathway, and there is hope, right? But the option cannot be when we're looking at this, the guy says, "No, I'm happy living underneath this tree, shooting up heroin." I'm sorry, that's not an option. Right. And I think that is really where we're at. I mean, that, because I've had these conversations and people, "Oh, you can't do that." Voluntary, involuntary, right? You can't do that. You can't do involuntary. You can't. I think we have to find a balance on this, but we can't do it unless we have the will to do it, but also the resources to provide a pathway back, right? Mm-hmm. And that's when you talk holistic, that is when everything meets. That's our education, that's in our schools, that's in our families, that's in our communities, that's in our government. It has to be as big as COVID, right? And we just had the example of examples. We're living it right now, right? We're living it right now. I literally just wrote a letter to our governor last week saying, why aren't you doing something about this addiction crisis in the same manner that you're dealing with COVID?
I love that.
It made me smile because, and I'll come to it in a second after the break, but yeah, let me pick on after the break, actually. Guys, Andrew Barkis is on the show. Just stick around for a second. Word from our sponsor. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show, guys. If you're just listening on podcast, that was Life Over Addiction, one of our sponsors. Lance Wright is a transformational life coach. Let me help you navigate your life's path back to the one of purpose and meaning. The chains of shame and guilt no longer have to hold you back, he says. Let's start a new conversation. You can visit his website, lifeoveraddiction.com, or you can call Lance direct on 310-888-8888. 890-2337. So I had a thought when I was on the streets, Andrew, when I was homeless, when I'd lost everything. I lost $1 million house and everything. A medical license was stripped of me. The kids, one of them still doesn't speak to me after 20, nearly 30 years. My eldest one contacted me 2 years ago, by the way. We'll get into that later. But wouldn't it be great? Because when I was on the streets, there was no help from nothing on nobody. Wouldn't it be great to have like a little police force or something like that, you know, where people are on duty 24 hours a day, 8-hour shifts, where homeless people can go to and get information? Because all I needed, Andrew, was one person who said, hey, let me help you. He took me back to his house. That's the reason I'm here today. I mean, would government fund something like that where we had these, you know, 10 guys even in an area that would constantly go around to the homeless, inspiring them and giving them choices?
You know, it's amazing because all it takes is one, right?
Yes.
And so we've seen different programs, and I don't know all of the various programs in the city. I know what's here, right? What's happened here. And I think it's more along the lines of Jennifer's loving to death theory, right? We have spent tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars on setting up, you know, warming stations and, mitigation sites and all sorts of social services. And there's a whole theory about, you know, housing first. So we're just going to scoop them, throw them over here, and oh, good, they're not over here. Now they're over here in a building or something. Seattle started doing what they called the navigation teams. And these were teams that were working with the police and getting out there. And these were specialists. These were social service specialists and people that were doing the same thing. And they were going literally in some of the roughest places in Seattle, the one called the Jungle, which was underneath the freeway. People were dying in there and murders and all sorts of stuff. They were working. They stopped that program. They don't do that. I mean, they removed, as part of this defund move, the navigation teams. And so yes, to your point, Rob, you know, that is one of the methods. And I talk about this a lot when people are saying, well, how would you do that concept, right? Of bringing people, specialized people, to go out to the folks. And when you can just say to them, look, here are your options. Here's a path. Here's what it is. And but you have to have the back end services, right? You have to have that thing. That's why in this program we talked about this Hope Haven. We've been thinking about these different ways of bringing together, you know, the services into a unified program where you have detox and recovery, and then, you know, life skills and training and counseling, and people have that opportunity again. But to your point, Rob, I think that is a core element that needs to be developed, is that getting people out there to help one-on-one. And, you know, when we do what's called the point in time count, you know, so they go out and they count everybody. You know, here we've got 100 homeless people over here, right? If you're going to count, why aren't you going out to help them? You know, I mean, why aren't we going out to do this? And I'm not saying that's not happening, because there are great people in our communities trying to do this. But I think they could use some help, right?
Yeah. And the thing is like, I mean, this, there's a lot of things that really piss me off, but this is something that really irks my ass, because until it's personal, people won't do shit about it until it affects. Like, I don't know that I deeply cared about heroin addicts until my children both became heroin addicts, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You know, and the thing is that we have a society that we have COVID, that's people are dying in LA like every 8 seconds, and people still don't wear masks. Like, we just don't care. And instead of defunding the police, why don't we fund the police on education? You know, now they want to take social workers around, and they want to, you know, take them out to domestic violence. All that is great, but why are we not doing that for the homeless and the drug addiction, right?
Yeah.
So talk to me about, like, what are you up against truly with this fight?
Well, you just described the entire West Coast.
Yeah, I know.
Politically.
I know.
That's what I'm up against. I'm in the minority. So, you know, it is political will. I mean, it's disallowing, you know, how did we get here? How did we allow this? How did we, did we just turn the other way because it wasn't affecting us, and we're just going to wait until the day where it is, it's not in my backyard, so I guess I don't have to worry about it, or I don't drive down that road, so I don't see it. And that's why I said to the governor, I said, Governor, his mansion, he can look at his bedroom window across the lake to one of the biggest encampments in Olympia, and growing. I'm like, it's right there, So I think what we're up against is just it's going to take a change in political direction. It's going to take a change at the local level. It's going to take, at your city council level, people stop allowing this. It's going to take at the state level, legislation to not allow this, to redirect those funds into the things that the three of us know work. The recovery, the aspect. And I'm not talking about, we like to call the 20-day spin drive, where you're just throwing people in and handing them a certificate and say you're better now. It doesn't work. No. It's got to be a long term. It's got to be, there has to be this thing, and it's going to take, it took years to get here. It's going to take years to get out of this, but we know we can do it. We know there's a pathway. It can't, we have to stop. At some point in time, we just have to say, enough, no more. We're not going to allow this anymore. Look at San Francisco. I love San Francisco. Oh my gosh. When I was in LA, my brother lives down in Thousand Oaks, and I was driving. I could not believe what I saw. And I thought, oh man, well, at least up here it's different. It's not different up here. It looks exactly the same.
It looks exactly the same wherever you go in America, I've found. We went to San Francisco the same, and I was aghast. In fact, me and my wife went to the ATM, and we drew a bunch of money out, and we just walked down giving $10 notes out to everybody. That we spent over $250,000 last year on helping the homeless and helping the addicted, and because there's no help out there. We're not taking any funding off everybody. This is just sick and tired of watching this shit go on time and time again. So, kudos for you, Andrew, for bringing this up, because I know you're against a brick wall, because we have. I want to change direction really quick for a second, because I want to get really personal, because my mom used to tell me that when I was homeless, that every time a police siren went past, she was hoping that they were going to knock on the door and tell her that I was dead. And that upset me for a few years, to think I'd caused that much trouble. Excuse me, I'm getting upset. That much trouble to my parents. In fact, I made amends one day to my dad, and he's the kind of guy that doesn't speak, doesn't really show his affection. And I tried to make amends, and he said, "Oh, it's okay, son." I said, "Dad, it's not okay. The stuff, I know that my mother suffered from cancer, and what I did to her made it worse. The doctor told me. He said, Dr. Rob, I'm going to tell you straight, your addiction, your homelessness, that everything you put on your mom, she died a lot sooner than she should." So when was that moment when you knew that your son was in deep trouble?
You're making me feel the same way, because I just had a flood of memories. That phone call, right? I think it was the first time that I saw him in the depths of his, and I didn't see my son, right? It was a phone call. He was living in a garage, and I tracked him down, and I went over there, and he came out of this garage, and it wasn't him. And I gave him a cigarette, time I was smoking, and he was smoking, and I said, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do? And he said, I don't know, Dad. I don't know what to do. And at that point, I did know that I couldn't do it. And I told him, I said, you gotta make a call, man. And I gave him all the numbers to the hotlines and everything else. But it was that time, and I wished that was going to be the only time I would see him like that, but time and time again, the phone would ring, and you wake up in the middle of the night, and it's like, oh my God, and I was the one that had to drive out in the middle of the night to find him on the corner somewhere, and I'll never forget the time that I finally said, no, I can't come get you. I can't come get you. So, there's all those, and the very last time, and it's the same story, but I'll tell you this, because I know we're getting short on time, but the PTSD, post-traumatic stress, I'm living it still. My wife is living it still. We're waiting for the other shoe to drop, even though he's doing so well. I don't hear from him for a couple of days, and I start to think, my wife and I are struggling. We've had our own challenges. We've got my other son turns 18. He's had to, deal with it. He's a rock star doing so amazing, and it's completely different, which is a whole nother story. But it's that damage that has been done to the thread of our family. Even though we're still together, it has really ripped us, right? And so many parents are feeling that same way, and we have to keep working. And I know there's things that we have to continue. I struggle with, and my wife struggles. We have to continue to do that. But God, that
it's gut wrenching. It's absolutely gut wrenching. Sorry, Jen, just let me finish that one off. This is what me and Jen do. When we take an addict or alcoholic on, if they're not married, we insist that parents take part. And the reason we insist parents take part is because everyone's suffering here, and this is what we don't see. When I saw my brother came down to London from Manchester to pick me up, and when he walked through the door, I was on my back and I was drunk, and there was loads of bottles around me, and the look in his eyes, I've never forgot, Andrew, the look in his eyes, because I was his big brother, the look in his eyes, and he's never spoke to me since. And I know he hasn't spoken to me because he loves me, but he couldn't handle that stuff. And this is what, for us, is missing in treatment is a weekend family trip or 90-day treatment is not good enough. You need to work on yourself, and you need to repair, you need to recover from this, because if you don't, then things are going to get really tough. And that's going to have an effect on the son. It's going to go back using. It's like everybody, it's a family disease. And it's a family recovery system that we need to look at. And I think, and I'm not just blowing our own horn here, Jen, but I think that's why that's what makes us different. That's why we have a 97% success rate. It's not just the addict. Getting the addict clean and sober is easy. Anybody can stop drinking and using, but what about the aftermath? Well, after that bomb's gone off, what about the shock aftermath of everybody that we leave behind and we don't even know about it? And the parents suffer. And the parents are hard. Sometimes it's hard for them to stay together. It's like the loss of a child. You know that the loss of a child is the biggest split off of everybody, every parent around. It's the same as that. And we need to start looking at this. And we need to start looking at the parents. Sorry, Jen. Go.
That's okay. No, I mean, I resonated with so many of, your story. I remember my kids went to 16 different rehabs. They were in jail, 6 different times. And every single time I got the collect call, I literally was sitting on my couch. I'd come home from teaching, and I owned a studio, and I would just eat popcorn with my phone by my side, waiting for that collect call to come through that an inmate from the Orange County Jail is calling you, and it's heartbreaking. Like, people don't understand how devastating this disease is. Yeah. And at the same time, people think that they have a choice, that so many times I heard people say, they're losers. And so what I did was I practiced to get out of my own shame that my children both of them were heroin addicts. People would say, so your kids, I moved to Seattle so that I could heal my heart. And people would ask me, like, where are your kids? And I'd say, they're in California, they're homeless, and they're heroin addicts. And I literally would say that over and over again so that I wasn't in shame of what my kids were doing. Yeah. And so talk to me about this. Well, as being in the public office, is it shameful that your city is full of addicts and homeless people? Because I think that shame is a big conversation to have, not even just as a parent, Andrew, but our city is a mess.
Yeah. Well, I think it is. It is, and I remember that statement. It's a shame. It's a shame to see you. It's a shame that, it is that way. But, I want to say one thing too, because I remember, because I had that same feeling, and I remember when I was talking to, because my brother is also a heroin addict, and one of my older brothers, and I have not talked to him in a year now, and I've heard he's doing better, but I had to completely break away from his situation. He was like one of my best friends, and anyway. But I just remember talking to him one time, and I was like, God Almighty, how look at where you're at. And he said to me, he says, do you think I'm doing this today because I'm having a good time?
Yeah.
He said, do you think I'm shooting up because I'm partying? He says, look at me. He says, this is taking a hold of me. I can't stop. And I said, well, you can't. I mean, there's a pathway, right? But that statement resonated with me. And I think that it's kind of helped focus when I'm thinking about those that are out there suffering. I know that, even my own son, is like, he got to a point, he did not want to do this. He did not in his heart want to hurt his mom and dad. He did not want to do the things he had to do. He was addicted to this thing. I call it the devil. The man, it is out there. But as far as the shame piece, we should look at this. And if we are truly, a community, right? I think that we've seen a breakdown of community and family and everything. We've been watching this for years and years and years go on in this country and everywhere. And this is part of the result of that, right? But we have an opportunity to turn that around, right? To move away from that shame and say, look, let's come together as a community and do this and figure out a way to do this. So
awesome. I love that. Guys, Andrew Barkis is on the show. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Hey guys, that was Living Recovery Interventions, one of our sponsors. Recovery begins today. Recovery begins together. Travis is a good friend of ours. Talking about a guy that went from a Xanax seizure to a crash at 120 miles an hour. He's been there, he's done it. If a loved one is in trouble, call Travis on 801-573-4188 or visit the website livingrecoveryinterventions.com. And remember, guys, recovery begins today. Recovery begins together. Andrew, let me take you back again. Last time I'm going to take you back before we start heading towards the end of the show, because I know one night I'd moved back home. Once again, my parents allowed me to go back, and I was drunk. I couldn't stop drinking. I just couldn't stop drinking. The last thing my daughter said to me at the age of 3 when the authorities took him off me was, Daddy, please stop drinking. And I couldn't do it. So my dad walked up to the bedroom at 11:30 at night. He got my stuff, a little bag, and he walked me downstairs and he said, you've got to go, son. And that's all he said to me. You've got to go. So, and he gave me £10 and I walked out. And I hated that man for years and years, Andrew. I hated that man for doing that. But I sat my mum years later when I was sober, and do you know what she said to me? I said, remember that time Dad threw me out? And she said, yeah. I said, I've still never forgot him for that. And this is what she said. She said, Rob, let me tell you, in 59 years of being married to your father, that's the only time I've ever seen him cry. So talk to me about them feelings when you said to your son, and this is the reason, by the way, he's 9 months over. One of the reasons is when you said, no, I can't do this anymore. What was going through your head to say that? I mean, that must have been the bravest thing you've ever done.
Boy. I actually did it a couple times. One of the last times, I remember, saying you can't come back here again. And I mean, because it got very volatile. It got dangerous for me and for my family and for my son, right, who was suffering. But I remember one of the last times when he was here, and and I called, he was this garbage bag man, right? He shows up and knocks on the door, and he's got all his possessions again in garbage bags because he's been kicked out of another place. And it's 10 o'clock at night, and he has nowhere to go, and he comes in, and I just remember, gathering all that stuff up, and you can't be here. And I mean, and it just turned on a dime, right? And walking up the street and throwing the bags, and I mean, this scene, right? And but I knew I had to do that, and I knew that I had to. I just could not, right? I couldn't go through it again, because there had been all those times where he had come back, right? And exactly like your dad, is that he had come back, and here he was. And then my youngest son, would wake up, and there's Cameron on the couch again, and he would, my youngest son would say, "What's he doing here again?" And I would say, "Well, he needs help." And I mean, this circle, and but I truly believe that those are the moments that, I don't know if brave is the word. I think it's just, those are moments that you have, and in the end, they build upon one another. Now, my son and I have talked about those times, and my saying to him, what I've told him is, that was then, right? That was, we both went through the stuff. That was then. I don't want to focus on the past. I don't want to focus on, we learned from that, but I don't want to focus on, there's that. I want to focus on the healing between the two of us right now, and all those experiences that we went through, some good, some bad, whatever. But God, I mean, and to know that there, so many people have done the same thing, and you have to find that place to be able to do that. But ultimately, it led him to where he walked, literally the last time, walked a mile or two to the detox place, and stood on the door until they let him in. So,
yeah. So, as parents, Andrew, we're kind of like a fellowship meeting where we could get together and tell the horror stories, right? Like, I remember being in downtown Seattle on the phone. At the time I was teaching a yoga class or a Pilates class, and my son called and he said, "Mom, I can't do this rehab anymore. I just can't do it." And I said, "Okay, well then don't." And he goes, "Well, I'm going to go kill myself." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to be okay with you killing yourself, because because it was killing me. It was literally killing me." He didn't. That was his 10th rehab. He went through, several more after that. But here's what I really want to take this conversation at. Dr. Rob and I are passionate about what we do. I am passionate about talking to parents, speaking to people about the crisis that we're in. Talk to me about how we can come together. And when I say that, really, Andrew, I really, really mean, how do you, me, Dr. Rob, whoever else we need to come together to make a difference in this pandemic? What do we need?
Yeah. Well, keep doing what you're doing. I mean, God bless you for spreading the word and growing your program and getting out there and using this medium to be able to share. And, that's part of it, sharing the story. I tell people all the time in my, in new legislators and stuff, I said, we have to tell our story. Where do we come from? Why are we doing this? Why are we representing our constituents? And to not be afraid to do that. What do we do more? We have to teach more people about this, and we need to get it out there everywhere, and just keep pushing. My challenge right now is, there's so much going on. There's so much that is involved in the role that I have as a legislator. Now we've got COVID, right? Now we've got budget problems. We got this, we got this, but it's like, I've got to find this. And even doing this program this morning, I was waking up, I was grabbing my coffee. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it was 7. I thought it was 8 o'clock. But it's reinvigorated me again. It's given me passion again. It started that fire back up in my furnace to say, okay, who am I going to talk to today? What am I going to do today to make a difference? How am I going to do that? And I think that everybody can do that, right? If you're in a city and you're seeing this, go to your city council, get involved, Start finding out. People say, "Oh, I could never do that." Yes, you can. If you've been down this road that we've been down, go share your story. Go tell that story. Go find out where those programs are. It's not about dropping $1 in the cup. It's about going out and the next steps, right? And I always people talk to me all the time like, oh, well, well, you must be something special to run for. No, I'm not. I'm no different. I'm a dad. I'm a business owner. I got involved in my community. I'm in the Rotary. I'm doing all this other stuff. I've been through my own stuff, man, and I'm still digging through it, right? And there's nothing unique about me, right? I just stepped into service, and I think that more people need to do that, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
they
do.
And more people that are thinking along the lines of the way we're thinking need to do that.
Yeah. And what I want to say is I hear you're up against a lot, right? I mean, the stuff that we even have going on in DC and the Capitol. And the thing that I think is missing is accountability. Recovery is built, the thing that helps us recover is accountability. That's something that we don't have in a higher level. We've got people looking from 30,000 feet up, down, and saying, oh, we'll do this, we'll do this. We aren't bringing in people like you that have been through the addiction crisis, that have been through, or Dr. Rob or me, that have really gone through the things that we have gone through. We've got people that are highly educated, but not educated in the sense of the experience.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Well, I agree, and it's like I was talking to somebody the other day within the legislature, the executive branch, and they were like, "Well, we're gonna, it's in the budget. We're gonna give another." I'm like, "It's more than just writing a check, guys. It's more than just putting a number in the budget and saying that's okay. We did it. We gave another $100 million towards homelessness. Let's move." No, it's more than that. It's getting the people. Let's break it down to the core level. Let's figure out how to do this. I think it is happening. I mean, that's the hope that I will say is it is happening. There is another member in the Washington State Legislature, Representative Lauren Davis. This is her life, is a recovery, and without her, I owe so much to her for what she's done to help me personally in my help, and she is a legislation machine and all about recovery, and she's telling the story, right? And other people are listening. So it's spreading. There are more people doing that. And I think that as we start to see this, maybe others will want to get involved, and they'll want to do that, because you have to be in the right positions to affect the change, right? The councils of these cities make the decisions on the ordinances and stuff that allow or don't allow people to live on the streets. And the appropriations of monies that do go to the services that help. And recovery networks and everything else, and they're suffering. I was on a show the other day, the COVID, think about this. They had to cut the amount of people who could be in treatment programs because of the COVID, right? And so 50% were not able to do that. Now they're suffering as far as the financial burdens on these programs and treatments, and some really, really good recovery programs, are in jeopardy. So you have to look at the entirety of the situation. But we just have to keep doing it, and it's going to be something that is ongoing every single day, and we got to find a way.
Yeah.
I love it. Guys, unfortunately, as when we get a great guest on, we'll run out of time. So I just want to close the show the usual way. Andrew, I'm speechless about the work you're doing. I'm speechless about how you were brave enough to stand up to your son, and one of the reasons he's got 9 months today. I'm speechless how passionate you are for this, and I'm speechless about how emotional you are about this, because the scars and the wounds are still there. I want to thank you, first of all, Cook, for coming on the show. Just unbelievable. But I want to recognize you for being that guy that's standing up and saying something, that parent that wants to share with other parents, to hope that they will never have to go through what you've been through, because that heartache will stay with you for the rest of your life, and all you can do is work on it. So thank you, Andrew. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for what you do. And if we can ever be of service to you of course, don't hesitate to contact. Courtney will follow up with an email. But for now, Andrew, thank you so much indeed.
Yes, Andrew, and I just really want to acknowledge you for your courage, your bravery, your power, and also I want to send you some healing for your family. And I hope you guys are doing your stuff, doing your work to heal that heart of that broken heart that you have. And I also would just want to ask, what do you want to leave the audience with? What do you want them to know?
Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity, guys, and I appreciate this, and I appreciate what you're doing every day. And I think that the leave is you have the passion that you see is real, the hope is real, and there is we can overcome this. I'm just confident we can overcome this. I mean, it is every day that we're given is a gift, right? And you know, that healing starts today. The minute I woke up, I'm a believer. I believe that by the grace of God, I'm forgiven. I keep moving on, and I think that's what we have to remember, that we have. This is the day that we were given, right? And let's do the best we can with what we're given today. So anyway, thank you so much. I really appreciate you both, and keep doing what you're doing. God bless you both.
Thank you. God bless you.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us today. That was Andrew Barkis on the show. Such an amazing guy. Coming up at 12 o'clock CST, we have Ricky Bird, the Rock and Roll Hall of Famer. Used to be with Joan Jett, if you can remember him. Such a great guy as well. Still talking recovery, still talking addiction and what we can do about it, and now we can push it forward. But for now, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you real soon.
Bye.